Hello, powerful one. Welcome to this edition of Inner Growth with Osezwa Elimihe. On this particular edition, we will be discussing intentional living, an introduction to African spirituality. Now, remember, I have made it clear in other videos that I am not competent to discuss spirituality in its full details. But you know what? That doesn't mean that I cannot talk about it at certain levels. Therefore, I will be discussing intentional living, an introduction to African spirituality. What do we think African spirituality is? And what is intentional living? We'll go into them in this video. And you know me, I am Osezwa Anthony Elimihe. I am in the business of helping you grow from inside out. That is the drill. Yes, intentional living. To live intentionally is to have a purpose behind your actions. Because if I say that it's to have a purpose behind your life, it will seem as if I'm just flogging the dead horse. Because you've heard it several times. But every single action of your life must have a purpose. Now, this simply means that when you have understood that your entire life has a goal, then every single action that you take on a daily basis will also have a goal. Now, what is the goal for your life? What is the purpose of your existence? Actually, you watching this video right now have had this question burning in your mind from when you were very, very young. Questions like, why am I here, had always been there in your mind. Who is God? Who created God? Who gave birth to God? What is all of these things? These questions have been there. But the moment you ceased to make the questions matter in your life was when you stopped to exist. You see, that childish fascination with life, that sense of awe, that sense of wonder, the sense of ignorance, I don't know it, how, what, why, those questions, when they ceased to trouble you, when they ceased to dog your heels, then you have ceased to live. Sadly, this is when it ends. When we embraced the pseudo-religion. A pseudo-religion is a religion that gives us the impression that they have all the answers. There is no need to quest anymore. You've got the answers. And then it tells you, okay, when you die, you will find all the answers by and by when the morning comes. And they think the morning is when you die and you get to heaven. No. Morning is when you wake up right here. Every time you have a question bothering you and you have an answer, that eureka moment, that thing nobody taught you, it just came. Somebody may have said a thing or two around it then, but one day, one moment, it just struck. Boom! Eureka! You got the answer. That is a morning. And every single day has its own morning. So every single day of your life, you have moments of eureka. When questions that you have been thrown into the world finally found answers. So what is this African spirituality we're talking about? African spirituality is not about blood-sucking shamans. It's not about some people dressed in certain attires and doing funny dances. It's not what Hollywood has given to the world. It's not what Tarzan gave to the world. That is not Africa. Okay? The unfortunate thing is that the story of Africa have been told to the world by aliens, non-Africans. But the real Africans who knew the story of Africa were shut out from media. So nobody actually was able to know what the true Africa is. Now, I would want us to understand that in every society, there are practitioners of true spirituality, and there are those who practice mediumism, some who practice spiritism. There are those. But for you to now take the people who practice mediumism and spiritism to represent an entire culture can be quite insulting. The power of any spirituality, of any practice, is that it transforms the life of the people. It transforms the way people relate with one another. It creates a sense of balance, a sense of equity, a sense of co-operationism amongst the people of the society. That is true spirituality. You may not push it beyond the material level, but at that level, it is a growth level. It's okay. But when a society loses these particular states of being, where there is no cooperationism, and then in place of cooperationism, you have a destructive competition, right? Now, you know that something else has taken root. It is not spirituality. When a society is fighting against themselves, when a society is making it impossible, extremely difficult for people to have the basics, the basics of existence, the basics of life, it means there is a culture that prevents quest, there is a culture that prevents growth. Because when people cannot simply solve the most basic of all material forms of existence, then they cannot quest for higher things. It is a force that is inimical to the human existence that creates such a problem. Let me take you on a stroll. When I was a boy of 7, 8 years old in my village, Urui, there was something I knew. One, you will walk down the road from the back of your house to as far as 10, 15 kilometers, if not more, in the bush to farm. On that path, on that stretch, a boy can do it alone. Because I closed from school when I was in primary school. A 7-year-old boy closed from school, and he will run to the farm. That was where my lunch was waiting for me. And there was no fear that I could be kidnapped. That fear was remote. It was not even existing. So I could go down that stretch on my own. The only fear that I had were fears that were embedded in my mind as engrams. Which are those fears? Fears that a snake might come out from somewhere, or that a beast might come out from somewhere, or that based on the folklore stories that I heard some nights back, that some spirits might come from nowhere and adopt me or something. These were the only fears you had. They were mental fears. They were not fears that were socially possible. They were not things that were available in the society. Kidnappers were not known. That was Africa. And then on that stretch of the forest road, there were trees. Trees that bore fruits seasonally. There were oranges, there were cola nuts. If you needed, you could pluck any and then drink as all. But you couldn't pluck in commercial quantity and go and sell. That would be criminality. It would be punished by society. Now, again, there was this pride that was in the heart of every person, not to do things that were odious, that were socially unacceptable, because you knew that society as a whole frowned against it, one. But before society, there was something else that guarded you against inimical actions, against iniquitous acts. These were your spirits. Now, in Africa, you had your personal spirit, you had your family spirit, you had your communal spirit, and on like that. So you lived with the understanding that those spirits were with you, that they were watching you and they were guiding you. African spirituality was about self-development, self-control, social development, social progress. That was what it was all about. And the understanding was that when a person progresses, society generally progresses. When we were harvesting our crops in the farms, we did not completely harvest everything. We left some there. And when I asked, why are we leaving some? They said, it's just like this, you just have to leave them for those who cannot farm. And the idea of those who could not farm was not possible because everybody had their farms. But then I just thought probably they were leaving it for the spirit. It's the same thing when they were eating. Before they ate, They remembered their ancestors and they offered. Prayer was a part of food. Before you ate, you wash your hands, you pour some water on the floor, you cut some pieces and you drop on the floor. You know, you were remembering one thing, that you came from the earth, physically this body, and it will go by there, because at the moment of eating, it is not your soul it is not you that are eating, it is this body. Therefore, before you nourish this body, you have to remember the source of the body, which was the earth. There was this connection between the human being and the unseen and the unknown. It puts everybody in check. It makes people responsible. But you see, people thought that African spirituality was about witchcraft. It was about suppression of other people, using powers, to do things. That was not Africa. Those things were things that the general society punished. They were known as the negative. They were not the things that were allowed a free rein. At the end of the year, the African man prepared by gratitude. How did they do that? They sort of spoke to themselves here on this forehead. They got a pure white pigeon. They carried that pigeon and they used it to pray with coconut. Pigeon, coconut, they used it. And what was that prayer? Of course, every prayer in Africa, whether it's in front of a shrine, began first with an address, an invocation of the Almighty. They first spoke to the Almighty before they now came down to the physical. They start talking to themselves. Now, if you noticed, a lot of the things that the Africans did, they were backed by what they call incantations. Incantations originally meant that you are making a decree, you are making a law about your life, about your activities, about the experiences you intended to have. You made a declaration. Okay? There's this thing that says, what I say will come to pass. In Italia said, that's in my language, it is what I said that will come to pass. And then you start saying those things. And when you are saying those things, you are not supposed to blunder or blumber. You must say them cleanly, without any error. It has to flow with a form of rhythm. What was that supposed to mean? It simply means that you should not have any form of doubt. You should not have any form of resistance in your system, because when you have a resistance in your system, doubt comes in. And when you have doubt in your system, then there is those accident of expressions where you begin to mumble and jumble and crumble along the path of your communication. So be decided. Let's say in those days that he who went to the shrine of Ogun does not blunder. You wouldn't go into the shrine of your deity and blunder. But why were there deities? Simple. The Africans believed that the Almighty was the supreme source of all things, but that you didn't have a direct access to the Almighty. If you wanted to reach the Almighty, there has to be an intermediary. Isn't that spirituality? Okay. Now, spirituality as we know it today, in the larger sense of mysticism, is this understanding that the human being cannot have a direct access to the source. There has to be an intermediation. And that is where the concept of the Christ, which is the pulley of the Almighty to him, comes into existence. And it is not because we have sinned that we cannot access God directly. It is because you cannot access the one that you do not know. You can't fall in love with something whose image you don't have. You get it? There has to be a picture, there has to be a visual representation of something for you to be able to now start thinking of falling in love. Because worship is about love, it's about devotion. So you have to have an image to fall in love with. Now, the image of the Almighty is totally removed. It's high off, don't even have an idea of what it looks like. Then there are entities that come as if they were representative of the Almighty. They had lived in the midst of human beings as humans, and then they sort of represented the Almighty, came up with some sense and wisdom that they thought were the ways to reach the Almighty. And then those people left symbols behind, which human beings can then use as a totem, as a means of connecting to create a form of an idea. This is where the origin of shrines came into existence. So when Ogun left, you had iron, metal. In other parts of the world, the same thing. Fire, things that were used, that were intricately connected with it. This way, stories were told around those things. They were basis of you getting yourself elevated into the level of devotion. When you have a symbol that stands between you and the source, what you're actually doing is that you are remembering the source. But the most important part is that even to today, even when you still had those things in place, but what still happens, the secrets of spirituality is hidden from people. It's hidden because of cult relationship, cult mentality. They're saying that, okay, we're not going to give it to everybody. Only a few people are going to have it. Now, there was some knowledge that was supposed to have been given to a child by the parents. Knowledge that you're supposed to have known at home, that nobody should teach you outside. Because if it got to that point where somebody had to be teaching you outside, it meant that you are a bastard. It meant that your parents didn't see you as their own, hence they didn't impart the knowledge to you. Or you are from a wayward family. That is to say, your family did not know anything, so they couldn't impart it to you. Therefore, you are not even worthy of such knowledge. Because who am I to teach another person what his parents, what his family could not teach him? Some basic things. Before you know what was happening, the majority of the knowledge that were supposed to have been imparted to people became cult knowledge, in the sense that if you can't be taught by your family, how can you learn it outside? You don't deserve it. And then there were other knowledge that were passed across that were indeed esoteric, and you needed to make yourself worthy, because if you were not worthy of that knowledge and it was imparted to you or it was given to you, you would abuse it, and the purpose of that knowledge will be defeated.